pay my respect to the Aboriginal elders of past and present. And also I want to acknowledge the number of unions that are out. So we've got obviously the CFMU and the MUA here, the NTU here, the Teachers Federation are represented. So really welcome and thank you for coming out this evening to really send a message to Malcolm Turnbull that he really does not care about workers. Many of our industries are being casualised, job security, inequality is growing. We've got corporates that don't pay tax and yet workers are being treated so poorly by this government that does not care. No doubt he's in there giving himself a big tap on the back.
Pay my respect to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the elders past and present. Sovereignty was never ceded. This is, was and always will be Aboriginal land.
We're back at QandA. We were here last time Michelle O'Cash was on the panel. We've been up there at Malcolm Turnbull's office. We've been down there in Canberra. And why? Because Turnbull and his cronies keep attacking workers and attacking seafarers. The government and the legislation needs to change. And when companies like Adani, Chevron and all those other rotten multinationals can come in here and exploit our resources without paying tax, the whole system needs to change.
175,000 students since this rotten Turnbull government was elected are now no longer getting access to TAFE. Unfortunately, in that building right there in fashion design and technology, some students are paying $54,000 to do a TAFE course, and it's a disgrace. Absolute disgrace that Malcolm Turnbull can stand there tonight on QandA and not face up to the reality of what he's doing to students who are now not getting access to a public education that they always had.
Turnbull with his mates in the big end of town deciding to disregard the laws that protect those seafarers' right to work. Bringing in police in the dead of night in the past 2-3 years up the gangway, throwing our seafarers off the vessels that they were working on.
But universities today, 75% of university staff are casuals. 75% of university staff can be sacked in an hour. That's the sort of university system that Malcolm Turnbull is responsible for.
Turnbull uses this as a way to bring exploited workers into our country. The fact they're on $2 an hour is a disgrace. The treatment they face on board is a disgrace. And we all should be appalled at it because it's bringing slave labour onto our coast and around our coast. A lot of these vessels, they're out of third world countries, tax havens and the rest. They don't have as much skill as we do as Australian seafarers. They don't have the security background checks and the rest of it. So when he talks about national security and border security, it's a load of shit.
I'm sick to death of seeing people like Malcolm Turnbull pretend that he in any way acknowledges the Aboriginal people on this land or any of the other tribal lands around this country. Well, I challenge Malcolm Turnbull to tell us what has been improved. We know that the environment is worse off now than it was under Tony Abbott. We know that job security is worse. We know that home ownership is worse. We know that pensions are worse. We know even the internet is worse. Australian workers in this country have never experienced the insecurity that we are now in the last 40 years. I want to understand from our leaders how our compliance, largely for the last 40 years, has contributed to better lives for Australian workers. We're told that we have to comply with the law. What law? The law that suggests that we have no right to strike unless we go through a ballot process that no other workers in the OEC have to submit themselves to. That isn't democracy. There is no democracy in this country if you're not allowed to go on strike, if you're not allowed to withdraw your labour. So it is up to us to go out into our workplaces, out into our communities and let the people know that they do have not only the ability to change the rules, but to change the legislation, to change the government and to change the very system that exploits them and robs them of the opportunities that human beings deserve in this country.
Malcolm, it's time to start looking at rebuilding our Australian shipping industry because it's the lifeblood of our whole entire nation. We're an island nation. We rely on it for our trade, defence, jobs. It's time to have a serious sit down with the unions and have a look at rebuilding the shipping industry.
I'm here to stand up for all of our seafarers who are fighting just to stay in the industry. Should be our right. We shouldn't be having to come out here and do this, but this is what we'll do if our rights come under attack, our conditions come under attack. So this is why we're here.
It's education, it's healthcare, it's jobs, it's penalty rates being cut by every worker. you name it, this government's attacked every single worker in this country.